There's some more verses that we can look at in witnessing to Latter-day Saints. And the LDS Church has taught that men can become gods and that man is God in embryo. But I'd like to take a look at Acts 14, verse 15. And this is in the context of Paul and I think it was Barnabas. And people were claiming that they were gods and were seeking to worship them. But this was Paul and Barnabas' response to those who seek to worship them as gods. They say, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men, of like nature with you, and we bring you good news, that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them." So Paul and Barnabas here are stating that they are men of like nature with you, and that they're indicating there that they are not gods because God is of a different nature than men, and they are just men. But we should take into account that it is very important that we don't just point out any wrong teachings of the LDS Church, but that our main focus is to point people to the gospel of Jesus Christ and to the true and living God who made the heaven and the earth. The LDS Church has a different view of salvation from the true Orthodox Christian Church. So I would like to look at some verses about salvation that you can use in witnessing to the Latter-day Saints. Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." And Ephesians 2:1 says, "And you were dead in the trespasses and sins." So the clear teaching of the Bible is that we were all once dead in our trespasses and sins, and that there was nothing that we could do in order to earn favor with God. We could never earn our salvation. The LDS Church teaches works-based salvation. Also, Psalm 51 verse 5 says, "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me." The LDS Church teaches an age of accountability at the age of 8, but the Bible clearly teaches that all men from the point of conception are enemies of God and in need of a Savior. They believe that we are saved by grace after all that we can do, but Romans 11:5 and 6 states, "So too at the present time there is a remnant chosen by grace. But if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise grace would no longer be grace." And we should take care that we point out to the LDS people that the grace of God that saves us is not because of works done by us in righteousness, but it is according to God's great mercy. And it is not grace if it is on the basis of our works. Romans 3:28 says, "For we hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law." And the LDS Church teaches that through the atonement of Christ, all mankind may be saved by obedience to the laws and ordinances of the gospel. But the Bible clearly states the wonderful truth that we're not saved by our works, because the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. Those who are in the flesh cannot please God, is what it teaches in Romans 8. So we should be very loving and compassionate as we proclaim to the LDS people that we're not saved by works. We're saved by faith apart from works of the law. Galatians 5:4 says, "You are severed from Christ. You who would be justified by the law, you have fallen away from grace." And in Galatians, Paul was specifically talking to those who thought that they would need to be circumcised in order to become Christians. But this also applies to the LDS, that we're not saved by works. If we're trying to be justified by the law, we've fallen away from grace and we're severed from Christ. And so we need to be proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ, that we're saved by grace. The LDS Church does teach a different gospel than the Orthodox Christian Church. And it says in Galatians 1:8 and 9, "But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed." And we should point out to the LDS people that we're witnessing to that it is a very serious thing to have a different gospel than the one clearly revealed in the Bible. And we should do this out of love for them, out of love for God, and seeking to proclaim His glorious gospel. So I hope that you can go forth and proclaim the gospel to the LDS people you may have contact with, that you can proclaim to them the glorious gospel that we're saved by grace.